Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating topic. How do you take a clever, successful AI prototype, one that's already proven it can do the job, and translate it into a full-scale, enterprise-grade UiPath solution? It's all about moving from a nimble proof of concept to a robust, production-ready powerhouse. Let's get into it.
We're going to break this migration down into 5 main parts. We'll start by taking apart the original prototype to really see what makes it work. Then we'll look at the UiPath tools we'll be using, map out the new architecture, tackle the challenge of rebuilding its intelligence, and finally, lay out a complete 5-month project plan.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can even think about building the new solution, we have to get under the hood of the original prototype. We need to understand its DNA, what made it so effective, and which parts are absolutely critical to carry forward. So the original InvoiceBot, it had a really slick end-to-end pipeline. It starts by grabbing invoices from emails using the Graph API. Then, a vision AI reads the PDF, figures out if it's a purchase order invoice or not, looks up key details in the ERP system, which happens to be AX 2012, and then perfectly assembles a journal entry. The final step is this clean import into AX. It's a proven, working system from start to finish.
Now this slide highlights an absolutely crucial design decision. Instead of using something fragile like screen scraping, where a robot just mimics mouse clicks, the prototype writes all its data to a SQL staging table. This is a game changer. Screen scraping is incredibly brittle. A tiny UI change can break the whole process. This database approach, on the other hand, is rock solid, auditable, and a core principle we have to protect in the new design.
And here, this is the real magic of the prototype. It has an automatic feedback loop. Think about that. When a person makes a correction, say they fix a project code, the system doesn't just process it and forget, it saves that correction. Overnight, it syncs that new knowledge into its memory, so the very next day, the AI is smarter. It learns from its mistakes instantly with zero developer intervention. That's huge. Okay, so we know what we have. Now let's look at what we're going to build with. This is our new set of tools, the UiPath Enterprise Suite.
And what's really cool is how nicely everything lines up. For every piece of the prototype, there's a corresponding UiPath product. The email fetch, that becomes UiPath Integration Service. The PDF extraction AI, that's now document understanding. The logic and lookups are built in Studio. The human review part is handled by Action Center, and the whole thing is run by Orchestrator. It's a complete like-for-like replacement.
So we have the old blueprint, and we have the new tools. How do we put them together? Let's get into the architectural design and map out the new data flow.
The new flow should look pretty familiar, right? It mirrors the prototype's logic almost exactly. An email triggers the process, document understanding extracts the data, a Studio workflow handles the complex business logic, it goes to a human and action center for review, and then, look at the last 2 steps, it inserts the data into that same SQL staging table using the same existing X++ batch job for the final import. We are not messing with the part that already works perfectly.
So let's zoom in on that a bit. For data ingestion, we're swapping out a custom PowerShell script for UiPath's pre-built M365 connector. That's a huge win for long-term maintenance. For PDF extraction, we're moving from a general-purpose vision AI to UiPath's specialized document understanding model, which is trained specifically for this kind of task.
Now, for the brains of the operation. This is a big one. The prototype's fluid, AI-based reasoning has to be rebuilt piece by piece as explicit, hard-coded logic in UiPath Studio. The custom dashboard gets a major upgrade to the much more powerful Action Center. And again, just to hammer it home, the AX 2012 import process, we're not touching it. It stays exactly the same, which de-risks the entire project.
All right, this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the heaviest lift of this whole project. We have to rebuild the intelligence, the very brain of the prototype. This is where things get really interesting.
So, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How on earth do we recreate those 2 most powerful features? The prototype's uncanny ability to reason through messy, real-world invoices, and that incredible, near-instant feedback loop.
This slide really gets to the core of the challenge. The prototype's large language model thinks holistically. It's like a human expert who can look at the invoice, the database results, and remember past corrections all at once to make a judgment call. In UiPath, every single one of those things is a separate data point. A developer has to manually write code for every possible connection, every rule, every score. It's like writing an incredibly detailed instruction manual versus just talking to an expert. And to put that into perspective, look at this.
This is what it takes in UiPath Studio to replicate just one small piece of the prototype's intelligence, figuring out the right project code. You're looking at over 8 separate database queries, 15 different steps just to score potential options, and multiple if-then branches. It becomes this massive, complex workflow of over 35 activities just to do something the LLM did intuitively.
Now let's talk about that learning agility. The difference is just night and day. With the prototype, a correction made on Tuesday is helping the AI on Wednesday morning. It's automatic. In the UiPath world, those corrections just pile up. To make the model smarter, you have to go through a manual retraining cycle. We're talking about a process that takes a developer days, maybe even weeks to complete.
And this is what that manual process actually looks like. The developer has to physically go in, export the correction data from Action Center, kick off a brand new training job in AI Center, wait for it to finish, evaluate the new model to make sure it's actually better, and only then can they deploy it to production. It's a formal, heavyweight, human-in-the-loop process every single time you want the model to learn.
Okay, so knowing all that complexity, let's get practical. How do you actually get this thing built? This is the 5-month plan to make it happen.
Here's the roadmap. It's a tight 21-week schedule. After setting up the environments, you can see the bulk of the work, a full 6 weeks, is dedicated right there in the middle to building out that complex PO and non-PO invoice logic. That's where all those 35+ activities per rule get built. And then you have another solid month for testing and user acceptance before you can even think about going live.
And you can't do this alone. This requires a dedicated team. The absolute key player is a senior UiPath developer, working full-time for the entire project. But they can't succeed without a business analyst who knows the AX 2012 system inside and out, plus support from database and IT admins to make sure all the connections and permissions are set up correctly.
And let's not lose sight of the goal here. We're building this to handle a serious workload. This new system has to be engineered for reliability and scale because it's going to be processing over 6,600 invoices every single month. This isn't a test anymore. This is the real deal.
A project of this size always has risks, and we need to be clear about them. There's no official UiPath connector for an old system like AX 2012, so that requires careful SQL work. We've already talked about how difficult replicating that project code reasoning will be. And then there's the challenge of building a custom system just to try and get some of that automatic feedback capability back. It all adds up to a solution that's just operationally more complex, with more pieces to monitor and maintain.
But here's how the team is smartly mitigating one of the biggest risks. They are deliberately choosing to reuse the existing, proven X++ import process. By writing to the exact same staging table that the prototype used, they ensure that the final, most critical step of getting data into the ERP is built on a foundation that they already know is 100% stable and reliable.
So, this leaves us with one final, big question. The blueprint is here, it's solid, and it's technically achievable. But can a structured enterprise platform truly learn the lessons of a nimble, intelligent prototype? Success isn't just about replicating the features, it's about preserving the intelligence and agility that made the original so special in the first place. And that is the real challenge.